What the hell? Video unavailable. Christ, that's almighty.
Good morning, everybody. Let's start with higher education. Call the Appropriations Committee, Higher Education Subcommittee, State Agency presentations to order, and you are up, Commissioner or Executive Director.
Senator, Representatives, my name is Tim Larson. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Higher Ed.
Microphone.
I'm sorry.
Try it again.
Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning, Senator and Representatives. I'm Tim Larson. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Higher Education. Today I have with me Division Director Jackie Lucier. Sean Seepersad is also the Director of Academic Affairs. Ram Abastaria is the Division Director of Finance. Mark French is our Director of Student Financial Aid. And Noel Kidney is my Executive Assistant, Legislative Liaison, and Public Information Officer. We've provided testimony prior to this. I thought it would be appropriate if I could call Mark French up and brief the committee on the status of the FAFSA program and the relative nature of it as to what's going on in Washington and how we are in fact prepared to deal with this from the Office of Higher Ed with your permission.
That would be great. Thank you.
Mark, why don't you come on up and please turn on your microphone.
And introduce yourself. All of the above.
Hello, Mark French, Director of Student Financial Aid with the Office of Higher Education. And I'd like to just give a quick rundown of what has been going on with the release of the federal free application for federal student aid, which is known as the FAFSA. In prior years, the FAFSA was released and available to students and families to fill out as of October 1, giving them October 1 through the coming spring and into the summer to apply for financial aid. And I should also mention the FAFSA is the form that the state of Connecticut uses to help determine financial need. So we use that in our office. Congress passed changes to the overall FAFSA simplification, which resulted in a tremendous amount of programming changes, policy changes at the U.S. Department of Education. And that process, unfortunately, has dramatically slowed down the ability of families to file their FAFSA. Initially, the October 1 deadline was missed by the U.S. Department of Education. And the expected date then was the FAFSA would be available in mid-December to later December for families to fill out. Unfortunately, that date went by and they did get the FAFSA available online. The U.S. Department of Education got it available online by January 1, they claimed. However, it wasn't the smoothest rollout. There was a lot of glitches and limitations. Families now can file their FAFSA. There still are glitches that we hear about, problems with the new FAFSA format online, but they can file FAFSAs now. The remaining holdup is that the U.S. Department of Education is not prepared to release that FAFSA data to colleges and universities or states. So we have not received any FAFSA data for the 24-25 academic year generally we would start receiving that sometime after October 1. We would start drawing FAFSAs in. The expected date now is late February, early March, that entities will begin receiving the FAFSA data. I do know that just recently, late last week into early this week, the Department of Ed has been sending out test files to all of the entities that require those. So there are test files now coming out to make sure that programming changes at the school level, at the financial aid system vendor level, can be matched up with the changes that the feds are requiring. So we optimistically are hoping for that end of February date that we'll start getting live FAFSA data in. We at the office, we had a FAFSA deadline and a Roberta B. Willis Need Merit Scholarship deadline originally set for February 15th because we were charged with getting those award notices out to students much earlier this year. So we were set to go February 16th, if you will, releasing awards. Unfortunately, because we didn't get FAFSA data, we cannot determine need eligibility for the awards. We moved that deadline out to March 15th to allow students and families to accommodate some of the glitches and the delay on the U.S. Department of Education. So we still have March 15th as our deadline. We'll start drawing in FAFSAs as soon as they're available. And we can start awarding as of March 16th. We can start getting award notices out to those eligible students. That's the current plan. Provided we get the FAFSAs, yes, that's all predicated on the Fed still being able to meet their now deadline of late February, very early March for FAFSAs to be released. If we do not get the FAFSAs, obviously we can't get awards out. It'll back it up even more. But this is something that everybody is faced with. The colleges are having trouble getting their award notices out to students, other states. It's a national issue right now.
So the national problem is that is the same across the board. Everybody's having the
Yes.
same problem.
Mhm.
The FAFSA is for what period that we're awarding things for now? Is it for a period that we're in today, or is it for a period that will happen in the summer and fall?
Right. The FAFSA that families are filling out now is for the academic year that begins July 1st, 2024 and goes through basically June 30th of 2025.
Okay,
So it's for next academic year for college students.
okay, great. And the problem is students don't know if they're getting a grant. Thus, it makes it hard for them to make a decision on where
Correct.
they're going to go.
Correct. And most colleges and universities traditionally use May 1st as their deadline for students to make a decision. I do know that many colleges are obviously relooking at that date, but that's up to the colleges if they want to extend that date or not.
Okay, and that date was when now?
May 1st was the
Okay.
traditional date.
All right, so that's the goal. And this is all a federally created issue because they
Correct.
changed the form.
They made dramatic changes to the formula and to the form that has to be programmed in with the changes to the formula.
Okay, and that formula provides more grant opportunities to students?
It should, according to the U.S. Department of Education, the changes that Congress made should provide Pell Grant, which is the primary federal grant program. It'll qualify more students for Pell Grant.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Representative Walker?
Thank you.
What do they want?
So, yeah, they were talking. I was letting them finish their conversation. Is there something else you want to continue with or before I ask another question? Go ahead.
Okay. We also, just as a notation, we have the Office of Higher Education was allotted, in effect, a double allocation of Roberta Willis money for the Need Merit Program to allow us to do these early notices. So that still is in play. So next year, we presume the FAFSA will be back on the October deadline that families can file it. So for the 25-26 year, we'll be able to get out early awards because we'll have that money that rolls forward.
That was where I was going.
Okay.
So as far as Roberta Willis is concerned for this year, we're still waiting for the data for the FAFSA.
Correct. Yes.
So that is going to delay our Roberta Willis allocations.
Correct. And award notices to students. Yes.
Okay. And we have no idea because it's out of our hands.
Correct.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome Tuesday. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that folks understand that once that information is passed along to our agency, we have the ability to act on that immediately and help these students out as soon as we possibly can.
All right, any other questions? Representative Dathan.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to hear, what are other states doing? Because I have some concerns that we are going to lose some of our Connecticut residents to maybe other state colleges that might be able to manage getting awards out sooner than we will in our state because of the deadlines. If you could please elaborate on that, that would be great.
Yes, certainly. Other states who also rely on the FAFSA, which the majority of states for their state aid do require the FAFSA to be filed, are in the exact same situation we're in. They can't get awards out. This has been something that there's an association called NASGAP, which is the National Association of State Student Grant and Aid Providers, has been working on behalf of states with the U.S. Department of Education. But the majority of states are in the exact same situation that we're in. They just have to wait until this FAFSA data is available.
So are private institutions as reliant? So we could potentially lose kids that are going to state colleges here in Connecticut to private universities who may be less reliant on FAFSA forms. I'm just worried about our talents leaving our state.
Yeah, one thing that does go on, private colleges in particular can use their own financial aid forms. You may have heard a form called the CSS profile form. That's a major financial aid form that's used in addition to the FAFSA. The FAFSA is used primarily to qualify students for federal aid, and in states like Connecticut, also state aid. But there are private colleges in Connecticut and throughout the country who do utilize the FAFSA or some other financial aid form. They can use that to get awards out. These alternative financial aid forms also allow them to estimate federal aid. So there is the possibility that there are certain colleges in Connecticut who use the profile primarily who are able to get award notices out on time.
Got it.
All set, Lucy?
Madam Chair. Yes, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, could you just clarify for me? You had said you thought you would have more information from the federal government mid-February to early March, because we're already at February 21st.
Well,
March 1st is next Friday.
Yeah,
Could you clarify that? Have you heard?
that's exactly the latest that the feds have released, is that we'll be getting the FAFSA data late February,
Okay.
early March. Yeah, there's no definitive
Okay.
yet. This
Very
date is when you'll get it.
concerning. With March 1st looming next Friday, that's
The one promising thing is that release of test files
Mhm.
to all the entities that need to make sure that they can accommodate the changes. So that's a good sign that happened
I'm
recently.
so glad I'm not doing a FAFSA this year. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Representative Paris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. French, I just want to get an understanding about on average, how much in dollars is being allocated to families and students here.
Through our state aid program.
That's right.
We have a little over $33 million in the Roberta B. Willis program. 10 of that goes to, is offered as need merit awards. And the remainder is divided up among the eligible schools to give out as the grant money. So that's the annual amount that we have in the Roberta Willis program.
Do you have an idea about how much per student that supports?
Yeah.
Be helpful to know.
The average award amount for FY23, which is the most recent year we have complete data on, it depends by school type. So the CSUs last in FY23 gave out about $3,246 on average a student in the need-based award. Well, that also includes the need merit. I'm sorry. UConn was at about 4,600. The independents were at about 3,100, and what we call the national independents were at about 4,500.
And correct me can I have one more question, Madam Chair?
Go ahead, sir.
I didn't want to get in trouble. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's per semester. Is that correct?
No, that's annual.
Annual per the year.
Yes. Mhm.
All right. Well, I'll save my concerns on that one for another time. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Walker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, over in your testimony, you have a discussion about a $552,000 transfer from OE to the Connecticut State Colleges and University CSCU system. And this is for a program that is from the Center for School Safety and Crisis Preparation. Can you let us know about that, please? What is that program and how did it get into the details of the program, what it does?
Hi, my name is Ron Mabaseria, Finance, I'm Division Director. So yeah, this is a safety program that is run by that institution. It was forwarded, those dollars were put into our agency and we put an MOU between us and we just forwarded them the money. So literally, we were just a pass through for the funding.
What is the program?
It's a school safety center program for that college.
Is it a school safety program? for the-
Western Connecticut State University, excuse me.
That's that.
It's a program for Western, or is it a program for schools in the state?
It's a program within Western Connecticut State University that we forward those dollars to them.
Okay.
So with regards to the specifics of those details, you know, we play no role within that program. All we were doing is being the fiduciary to create an MOU to put those dollars there. From that point on, next year they're literally just, since we, in a sense, we're not playing any roles, we're giving those dollars were directly sent to Western Connecticut State University.
We'd like to get some details about the program. from
Absolutely,
you,
we
please,
can get that
because
for you.
If I remember correctly, I did hear about this from another group. It's a program that is working with local K-12 schools in the state in different areas, dealing with I'm trying to, gun safety issues, things that are addressing the student body and working with them on handling crisis issues, et cetera. And we'd like to get more detail about it, because as we started hearing about it, we are concerned because of the credentials and the people that are, not the people, but the credentials and the issues that they're addressing. And are we making sure that we're not creating another school information system that doesn't have the credentials to back it up in order to serve the community? So we really need to hear a lot more about that.
Yeah, we'll get that to you by the end of the day today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Didn't have anything. All right, guys, thank you very much. You're all set. Up next is the University of Connecticut and the Health Center. I just got here right on time. Guys are all set. Come on up. I'll call you in. Yeah, they can start right now. Let me know when you guys are set, when you're all. What? Madam President, are you ready, or do you need a couple minutes to get all set?
You're ready, thank you. So
Okay.
co-chair, ranking members of the committee, thank you for giving us opportunity to update you on the budget request and the transformative accomplishment that you had made possible at University of Connecticut. I'm Dr. Radenka Merrick, President of University of Connecticut. And with me today, I have Dr. Bruce Liang, Interim CEO of UConn Health and Dean of School of Medicine, Jeff Gagan, CFO of UConn Health, Dr. Ann Andaliva, our Provost, Nathan First, Vice President for Students' Life and Enrollment. And I would like to thank each of you for all your support, dedication, and leadership, and making transformative changes for UConn. We were asked to submit our document testimony in advance. We submitted documents, we submitted budget presentation. We answered the questions that Secretary Beckham had. And we want to thank everybody who worked so hard with us on putting the budget together. We want to focus on answering your questions, but we want to acknowledge support of OPM office, Governor Lamont, and all the people that work with us. Thank you so much, and we are ready to start with any question that you have for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just introduce the rest of your panel?
Hi, good morning. Jeff Gagan, Chief Financial Officer for UConn Health.
Bruce Lian, Dean of School of Medicine, Interim CEO of UConn Health. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your kind comments. Are there any comments or questions? Representative Walker.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for coming today. Can you tell me exactly what you feel the impact is on a reduction percentage-wise of your UConn budget that is in the underlying budget proposed by the governor's office currently?
I would like CFO to respond to that question.
So in the governor's proposed budget, the way that we've gone through it, basically the reduction is year over year in the one-time funds. Those one-time funds are made up of two basic items: lapse funds that were given both to the university and UConn Health, and then ARPA funds, again, both to the university and UConn Health. So the fiscal year 25 budget that was passed last year is basically the same that the governor actually proposed. There is one item. So for UConn Health, there was $4,250,000 that was for support of fringe benefit differential for John Dempsey Hospital. That was actually removed. That's located in the comptroller's budget, but that's one item that is different. What we do have, though, is a request for additional funds, and those are the additional funds that we have requested through OPM. So of note, in the information that we did submit, we do have details for the actual request, but for the university, we're requesting $47.3 million, which is basically to restore the one-time funds going forward. And then for UConn Health, there are the two items. We're requesting that the $4,250,000 that was removed be added back to the budget. And in addition to that, the $12 million for additional support for UConn Health.
Could you just repeat the impact to UConn Medical? I didn't quite hear that. I'm sorry.
For UConn Health, and I'll try to find the actual page numbers so we can.
Thank you for the documentation. It's lengthy.
So on slides, you have 48 and 49.
You have to ask permission.
Do we have?
We
Can
have
we?
it, yes.
Oh, so permission to share the slide if we could?
Madam Administrator.
They're all set for screen sharing, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You're all set to screen share.
Yes.
Do you have a
Right, thank
computer with you? There you go. Okay, there you go.
And on slide 44 of the UConn testimony, Pat. So right there. So if we go down just to the additional state funds requested, you'll see in the highlighted section, there is the request for UConn, which is 47.3, was the same request that we made earlier in the year to OPM in October. For UConn Health, though, if you go to the far right in the highlighted section, you'll see that it's 12.6, which is the additional request for funds. Of note, that was dropped from our original request of 46 million down to 12.6, mainly due to the clinical activity of the clinical enterprise of UConn Health performing better than originally budgeted. And then below that is the $4.3 million, which, as I mentioned, that was the one item that was removed for the fringe benefit differential for JDH. So the total for UConn Health is 16.9 million. So together, it's $64.2 million of the additional request that we are seeking to be added to the current budget.
Okay, and my second question is, has this impacted the faculty research grants that they very sincerely brought to us last year for the impact of fringe?
So with the fringe benefits, this includes all of the activity that is in that change of the fringe benefits. So there's two major items that we do want to make sure. So number one, we are very thankful for the change actual in the methodology. So going forward, the state is paying the retirement cost for all employees, and UConn and UConn Health are left with all non-retirement fringe benefits. So with that moving forward in that split, the actual fringe rate has reduced. So our competitiveness on grants is expected to increase. The grant cycle, though, it runs anywhere around 2 years. So when we applied and put in all of our award applications in the current year, starting next year, we hopefully to see that effect on the grants and being more competitive on those awards. The actual fringe, though, in the budget, and sharing this slide, number 47, which is in front of you. The budget, though, as we might remember, was budget neutral. So this did not actually have a positive or negative effect on UConn or UConn Health's budget. So the blue bar just shows the reduction of state support. So state support from where we originally are has dropped $60.4 million. And then the corresponding reduction on the expenses that UConn and UConn Health paid were also brought down $60.4 million. So the same amount of revenue that was reduced is the amount of savings that we had on the overall expense side. But to the bottom line, it was a neutral effect.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Paris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to continue along the line of questioning that Chairwoman Walker had walked us through recently. Do you anticipate any mass layoffs within the next 2 to 3 years? And if so, which positions will be affected by those mass layoffs?
We didn't work on the layoffs. We are looking, how to generate the new revenues, how to increase the number of the students coming to UConn. We had the record high of application for 58,000. If you remember last year when I testified, I said 47,800. So it's 10,000 more. So we are looking how to accommodate more students without compromising the quality of education. And what are the other means to address the shortfall, how we work with state, how we look our efficiency, how we look the size of the classes, ratio of the faculty to students, and what are the all means that we can apply before looking for the layoffs. So this is not at this point that we are considering.
And it's the same for UConn Health. As you know, we dropped the deficit, forecasted a deficit for FY25 for almost $33.6 million. And that's driven by clinical, and we like to continue to focus on growing the clinical revenue and make us less dependent on the state support for that. And we don't anticipate any layoff, and we are still recruiting, actually.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Representative Haddad?
Maybe it would be helpful if you did talk about more specifically about what sort of revenue increases you've already that are already impacting students, and also what other plans you have for the for reductions in expenditures. My understanding, for example, is if you could that there have been a series of tuition increases And if you could describe that, say, over a 5-year period, what the impact has been on students for those tuition increases. And then similarly, certainly folks, in our neck of the woods have been contacted by a number of faculty and staff who are concerned about an exercise that is being undertaken at UConn to reduce the departmental budgets by 15%. I understand you're not, I guess, quote unquote, looking for staff reductions, but don't those departmental budgets include funding for graduate students and other personnel?
Yes, they do. And first we start with administration. So in the office as a president, we reduced number of the position or merged the positions. So now we have one CFO for UConn and UConn Health. Previously we had 2. We have now one HR for UConn and UConn Health. Previously we had 2. We eliminated some of the positions. We have one vice president for the research. So we are looking what are the administrative positions that we can reduce and leverage in order to control our balances. When it comes to students, our focus is, and my focus as a president, is student first. So everything that we do, my question is how this is going to help students. We did the strategic planning for UConn for 10 years, 2024, 2034, and we have over 10,000 people participating in that strategic planning. Out of those 10,000, more than 8,000 students participating. The things that are important to students are advising and mentoring, quality of education, mental health support, and housing. So we have the priorities, what students said to us that we have to do. The reduction, if there is no additional support from state, the reduction has to happen on all these levels. One is academics, that we are doing 5% reduction each year for the next 3 years. The another one is we are also looking with athletics. Athletics has to also chime in and reduce the dependence on the state. So there are many things that we are planning, but nothing will happen overnight. The French rates that state help us to take off of our books makes us now research competitive. What that means that when our faculty applied now, they can get the grants and they can have the money to recruit the graduate students. So everything is on the table. We are looking at everything. We don't want to compromise the quality. We are looking students to faculty ratio, staff to students ratio, administration to students ratio. But I would like, Jeff Kagan to go more because he goes and does the planning with each unit. Another thing is that what I'm doing, we have the new CEO Foundation. I'm asking Foundation to step up to the plate and work with the donors and bring more philanthropy. One of the tasks that I have with deans that 50% of their time has to go on the fundraising. So there are different mechanisms how to generate additional revenues. As I said, nothing will happen overnight, but we have a strategy. So Jeff, would you like to elaborate further?
Sure. The only thing I really would like to add to that is the addition of both on UConn and UConn Health. The plan is multifactorial. So we are looking for additional support from the state, but also in the meantime, we are looking to budget an increase in our revenues. And we're also then looking at holding expenses and running the operation with less in total funding than we did before. So an example for UConn, the actual budgeted deficit next year is $70 million. So looking for $47 million additional from the state, we are still doing our part by reducing the expenditures. And as President Merrick just said, we do have a plan proposed for a reduction on all of the institutional support administration and academic units. That is 15% over 5 years. So next year, that is $18 million or 3%. And then in addition to that, there is a $5 million forecast on additional revenues, really focused on the items that we can do as that have been discussed in the governor's budget. So our mix of tuition looking at the number of students, doing increase of the total number of students, and then also the foundation. So as we've been working with the foundation, we're trying to increase the actual cash into the university each year to help us balance the budget. So those are just examples of what we'll continue to do as we move throughout this budget cycle.
Do you have another question? Representative Dathan.
Hey, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for your presentation. I have two questions. The first is that you mentioned that you had 58,000 new applications this year. That's amazing and huge increase over last year. In terms of the demographics of the folks that are applying, what proportion of those applications are from Connecticut residents versus out of state? And do you envision any change in your mix of acceptances for applications that have received based on where we are? Because we know obviously out of state students pay higher tuition than folks in who are in state. So any insight on that would be appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. We have increased in application of the Connecticut residents, and those numbers are changing daily. So I would like Nathan first, if he can speak and provide the facts. So Nathan.
Thank you, Madam President. So yes, we've seen application growth that's been unparalleled in recent time. We have about 500 more applications from Connecticut residents compared to last year at this time, and the remainder of the increase is coming from out of state. With regard to what we anticipate in terms of admissions decisions, our release date for admissions decisions is March 1, and that's coming up relatively quickly. We anticipate being able to offer comparable amounts of admissions offers to Connecticut residents to what we've done historically there. It's worth noting that the growth in applications in Connecticut comes at a time that the number of high school graduating seniors has been on the decline. And so we're pretty proud of that as continuing to attract more and more students interested in coming to the university.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing how those demographics really affect our student populations going forward, and how, because that I know was one of the things that we discussed last year as a change. The second question I had was a result of a comment you made about you being more competitive for grants, for research grants. Would love to know if if there's been additional analyses or reports that have been done to see how that increase in competitiveness will actually reach our revenues that we've received from that increased research activity. I did see that slide that you're showing, but just was hoping you could talk a little bit about that, both from the UConn health perspective as well as from the main university.
Thank you. So if we go to slide number 40, we describe the process of the funding. So it takes between 6 months and 1 year to write a successful proposal, if not longer, depending on the size and complexity. After that, it takes the sponsorship agencies, National Science Foundation, National Institute Health, Department of Energy, Department of Education, about 6 to 10 months to review those. And then award process is up to 3 months. As you can see, it is very competitive process. We are expecting today, actually, Department of Energy received on the solars and controls 4,000 proposals, and we are among 10 that they are considering, and they will fund 4. So that tells you the scale of and competitiveness of those large grants from federal state. So we are now hitting 34.3% hit rates or success rate. The average grant, and this is usually related to the young faculty, is about $426,000. The larger grant centers require significant investment from university as well as state, but those are north of 10 million. So we are hoping that with this reduced rate, our success rate is going to be higher, like 40%. Why does this matter? When the review panel looks the French rates, they look what can you do with the federal dollars. If your federal dollars goes for the research and students and faculty, they will support. If your French rates is too high and above of everybody else, they will not consider. So this is the first time that in previously we had been subsidizing to some extent internally to make sure that we can be competitive. But now that is off of our books for $440 a K grant, previously you can get one and a half graduate student. Now with reduced French rates, we can get 2.5 students graduate. So if we are more successful with the research dollars, we will be able to take more graduate students coming to UConn. And that's our goal. And that's why we are very grateful for reduce the French rates and to OPM secretary for really, paying attention and everybody and understanding how important that was for us. And also working with industry. Industry wants to invest if you can deliver for the dollars that they give to you. And that will make us more competitive with the industry grants.
That's helpful. Do you have any view what proportion of these grants are coming from industry versus federal?
At this point, it is about 10%, but most of the grants are coming from the from the federal government. But as I said, with these French rates, we are going to increase also the grants coming from industry, research grants. We have different types of the grants, sponsorship program, and short grants with industry, but the research dollars is about 10%.
Great, that's helpful. I'm going to continue to do some research, or I might have some follow-up questions, but this is really great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome and thank you for being here. And looking at slide number 35, indicates that there's an increased access for patient care and growth. But Dr. Lang, you mentioned that the clinical revenue is down. Can you just elaborate more on that? In your opening remarks, you had said that the clinical revenue is down. Is that due to reimbursement or?
No, actually, it's the opposite. I may have miscommunicated, but no, the net patient revenue actually has gone up.
Okay.
Compared to 2010, we almost triple in terms of clinical revenue. Just in the last 10 years, it went up by 141%. So that growth curve is continue, if you could see on this slide of 35.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One more question, Madam Chair. And I'm not sure who would be able to address it. So you have quite the UConn Husky athletic program. Can you tell me about how many students are on athletic scholarships?
600.
How many?
600.
600. Okay, and is that does that include room and board as well, or just room and board? And I forget how it goes with a full athletic scholarship.
Yeah, it's a mix, actually.
It's a mix.
Yep.
Oh, there you are.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Paris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, UConn has some of the finest regional campuses in the state: Avery Point, Hartford, Waterbury. In fact, your parking lot is in my district for the Stanford campus. It's a very nice parking lot. Out of the $47.3 million asset you'll have to try to bring you up to parity in terms of what the state support will be, how much of that support will go down to the regional campuses across the state, which I know they're in dire need of?
The dollars have to follow students. So we are looking, what is going to be enrollment in Stanford, in Waterbury, and Avery Point, and provide the equal, opportunities for those students. So the issue that we have in Stanford is the housing, as well as in the Hartford. That's less issue in Waterbury. Avery Point is also housing issue. So that's a determining factor for many families and students deciding where to go. From the quality perspective, students in Stanford really love it. We have 12 programs that offer 4 years degree. We have the students who, when they commit, says, I want to go for 2 years to Stanford and then transfer to Storrs. When it comes time to transfer, they want to stay. So we work very closely with mayors of the towns. We also do the fundraising for the regional campuses to provide additional support for the houses for students in regional campuses. We also pay attention to the quality of the faculty as well as directors, and we recruit the best directors and deans of the regional campuses to lead and inspire the students and communities in our regional campuses.
I appreciate that. For my second question, Madam Chair, I would assume with 58,000 applications and there being so much demand for all of these regional campuses, not just Storrs, that the average class size will grow. But I'm interested because now you've brought up the fundraising portion of your efforts. Once again, what is the overall goal for the endowment for the foundation to support the university?
You know, we started late, and I don't want to take that as an excuse for us not being where we are. We need a committed leadership. We had a lot of changes in the leadership, both as a president, foundation, and provost. The new CEO is very committed. Our goal is endowment is 1 billion, but our fundraising goal is really to go over 1 billion.
And that, I'm sorry, and that 1 billion's to meet that deadline by what? Is there any?
So for that, we are planning campaign, and I cannot announce when, but pretty soon. And when we announce, it is going to be campaign, will be open campaign for 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before I move on to Representative Haddad for a second time, can you take down your slide presentation now? Because we're not using it and I can't.
It's making us dizzy.
Keep flipping through it and I can't see all the people online. More importantly, I need to make sure I'm getting to them too. So Representative Haddad.
Thank you. I have a number of questions. I wanted to make sure that other members of the committee had a chance to ask some questions, but the first one I have is around, again, the research grants, an increase of research grants. Can you explain to me how additional research grants defray the cost of the academic delivery of services to undergraduate students? I'm trying to understand how one impacts the other, or if in fact they don't impact each other at all.
They do impact. So when the students make decisions where to go and where to study, the first homework that they do, they look the quality of the faculty. They're looking, are they world-renowned experts in any kind of the research, energy, cancer, just to name it few. The students who are undergraduate these days demand to be in the research labs from the freshman year. And all the students who are in honor programs are doing research as an undergraduate, but there is almost no student in the junior and senior year that doesn't have one or the other side of the experience, either during the independent study or during the summer opportunities. And one of example is our students from STORR going and doing the research during the summer at UConn Health. So there is intertwined, that it is so important for the quality of the students and bright minds that want to come to Connecticut and our own in-state students to have those research opportunity. This is what they're passionate about. They want to learn. They want to position themselves to have a great jobs. And they land with the great scholarships if they have a research experience. So it is multifaceted what the research is doing for academic quality of the students and for their paths to career. All the students that apply to School of Medicine, and Dr. Lian can elaborate more, done the research, and the competition is great. We have the students who have the perfect GPA, who have the perfect MCAT being on the waiting list. We want to keep them in Connecticut. We don't want to lose them. And I would like Dr. Liang to talk about research experience and how that relates to academic experience And why does it matter that we have a strong medical school and hospital and dental school?
Thank you so much, Madam President. Thank you, Representative Haddad. And what the president said is absolutely true. And we have increased our research grants by 60% in the last 7 years, mostly from National Institutes of Health, which is rigorously competed for. And it speaks to the quality of the faculty that we're able to attract and retain. And they love the students. They love the students from UConn undergraduate. Unfortunately, during the school year, the students don't have as much time, but during the summer, as the president mentioned, they do come to UConn Health Farmington campus. We see a lot of them, which is wonderful. And they stimulate the faculty to think of new ways of doing research. And of course, there's a mentoring that happen as well. We get about, it's about 40 applications for one medical school offer of admission. So it's highly competitive. And with our students from UConn who get that research experience, plus if they come from the state of Connecticut, they have a double advantage because we take 75% of our class from state of Connecticut. I will venture to say every son and daughter of Connecticut who aspire to become a doctor or physician or scientist or dentist, they apply to our schools, which is medical school, dental school, and the biomedical division of the graduate school. So those are the three academic components at UConn Health. Hopefully that answers your question, Representative.
And I would just like to build a little further and more. We have collaboration with the JAX Lab. So JAX Lab steps into our students in computer science for the bioinformatics. And that creates the pipeline of the students for them to be on the grants. So students want to do research, students want to do independent study, students want to work for institutions like JAX and have that kind of experience. So it is not only what happened inside of the UConn, it is also what happened with the companies. A number of our students during the summer go and do the research for the companies by using the UConn facility. So all that investment that state made into Science One, innovation partnership buildings actually help to recruit and have this record high of 58,000 applications. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. I might have more questions for you at the subcommittee level about, whether or not there's a financial connection between what students pay and how much research you're doing. There's a firewall, right, between a research grant and using it for things other than for that research grant. And so I understand all of what you just said. I think it probably does improve the quality of faculty and provides opportunities for students fortunate enough to work on that grant. Lots of other things, but I just want to, I'm curious to know whether or not there's, if the grants somehow subsidize the teaching part of the university.
They do not. So when we submit the grant, we submit the budget, and budget goes to rigorous review, and there is annual reporting on budget, and some agencies have the quarterly reporting, like Department of Defense, Department of Energy. They'll watch every penny. Everything that is approved, it has to be spent the way that is approved. Otherwise, we are in violations with the federal rules.
Is there an administrative sort of a portion of a grant that can be used to defray administrative oversight over the grants that would otherwise be the responsibility of the university through other funding mechanisms? Or is there, I mean, is that sometimes grants have an administrative sort of VIG, really, is what I'm talking about. Do such things exist in academic research grants?
Being research active faculty, I will tell you what can happen, So whatever is in the grants, you have to follow the rules. We had the power outreach at Eversource 2 years ago, 5 times. 5 times my air compressor broken and I had to replace. But Department of Energy says you can only have 1 air compressor. So the power outreach is not anymore that you can build a federal government of what happens. And university has to have that flexibility to have faculty to be successful. So there are the things that are ruled by research dollars, but nothing goes to perfection. And when something happens, operation and budget and administration must have that flexibility to address. But if there is anything else that Jeff Gagan, through his experience, and we always come to ask for more money from him, can elaborate, I would like to hear from him as well.
Yeah, and definitely we could go into more details in the subcommittee. But most grants do have an F&A, the facilities administrative portion, or indirect cost recovery. At the current time, though, all of the grants that we have, the amounts that we actually get paid for that are less than the amount that our actual overhead rate is. So those could be in the low 15 to 20%. On the federal side, it is higher. It's about 60%. But those funds are used in three main ways. Number one is for the administration and basically the upkeep and facility cost of all the buildings. The second one, though, goes to, as the president just mentioned, goes actually back to the principal investigator. They use those funds to reinvest in research. So they buy new equipment with those. They hire more grad assistants or items that they can use to advance their research for it. And then the same is for basically the individual colleges, schools and colleges, and they can use that again to help generate new research activity out of their school and college for the growth. But most of 100% of what comes back to the research enterprise stays within research.
Thank you. One additional question, which gets more broadly at where we are and how we compare UConn and state support for UConn with other states. I asked our Office of Fiscal Analysis to give me a historical review of where we've been in the past for state support, and I'll just share a couple of sort of things about it, which I think are interesting. In fiscal year 10, which is the year I was first elected here, the block grant was $233 million. That is right now that block grant is scheduled to be $216 million in fiscal year 24. There's some reasons for that, but that's 93% of where it used to be. Not the highest, but just 93%. What leaps off the page is tuition revenue. Tuition revenue has increased just about 2.5 times. It increased 227% over the last 14 years, which indicates a real substantial shift of how we're financing higher education in Connecticut just over the term that I've been sitting here at the General Assembly. In your testimony, you talk about the subsidy, the total percentage of your budget that's paid for out of state revenue as being 19%. When I'm looking at this chart, it looks like that's true if you include the ARPA and the one-time revenues that are being provided. And I just want to make sure that's your understanding. If you count just the sustainable appropriations, the stuff that's not sort of set to expire, that percentage is down to 14%. I know you had a slide in here that talked about where other universities were. Can you talk to us a little bit about where we are with your peer institutions and in terms of that 14%?
So I'll just make one comment, Representative. If we go back to 2010, and that's back basically before the increase in the retirement rates because of the legacy costs and items that were there. The item, though, of last year, again, changing the fringe benefit methodology, we are rebasing back to where we are. So now that that has been removed, the analytics really should be based off the 2024 budget. So we are at the new baseline, and we are where, basically where we believe we should be back to, at least as a comparing apples to apples. So as we move forward, though, I think you are correct. So currently we're at about a 16% blended rate. So 19% at the university and 13% at UConn Health. So we feel now we are much more competitive in line with the actual schools that are comparison. In our actual submittal, you'll see we do have a comparison of what's called core revenues. So that is just a way to compare universities in the iPad system across one of another. One of the major things they actually remove is our dining and our housing from it. So with that comparison, that if you can actually see, and I believe it's page 15. I can't read it through my, yes, on page 15. We were growing in comparison to the other institutions we were benchmarking against. But if you look at and do our new fiscal 2024, again, after the new fringe benefit methodology, that percent of core revenues from the state is approximately 22. Comparing to the latest information we have with the other universities, the University of Vermont being the one outlier, but all other universities are really between 20 and 30%. So again, and that comparison question, I believe we are currently with the ARPA and the lapse funds, as you said, or the one-time funds, we are currently in the mixed or right in the middle, comparing ourselves to the other benchmark universities.
And we have this conversation with the OPM secretary, and we share the data from iPad. We compare them, we analyze them. We also have independent agency that look those data and make sure that we compare apples to apples. So 2024 is the first time that we are comparing apples to apples, because there is no other state university of any university for that matter that had a paid legacy cost applied to the budget of the university. So as Jeff says, if we remove that, we are going to go to 22%. Rutgers University is 30%. Stony Brook University is 40%. University of Maine is 24%. University of Massachusetts Amherst is 34%. So those are the state university in our neighborhood that we compare ourselves to them.
All set, Representative Haddad. Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. Nice to see you. I want to start quickly with a question to follow up on what Representative Haddad was asking. In your testimony, you detail that UConn is ranked number 9 among public universities by the Wall Street Journal. What were number 8 and number 10? Or were we tied for number 9 with any other institution?
We are not tied, but I can tell you that we are ahead of NYU. And this year we have more than 1,000 applications just from New York City alone. So, the reason why we are doing well is due to UConn's affordability. And you hear how high it is, but we provide scholarships to 15,000 students. So our financial aid went from 150 million to 250 million. We have to make sure that our students can succeed. Our average time to degree is a number 1 in the country, 4.1 year. The most expensive education is one that it takes a long time. So we have to look those numbers. And then value, it adds to graduate salaries. We are becoming very competitive with the salaries that our graduates have once they graduate from UConn. So all those 3 factors are collected by Wall Street Journal, and they rank us number 9. We are ahead of the Brown. We pride ourselves for that too, because they are very close, but they are still Brown. So.
Thank you. The reason I asked that question is because I'm trying to understand what this benchmark is. I'm trying to, and maybe this question is more appropriately directed to the Office of Policy and Management instead of you, but how did they choose these peer institutions? These 6 or 5 listed here that were chosen by OPM, they're not among the top public universities in the country, are they?
So the OPM selected Rutgers, Stony Brook, University of Maine, University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and University of Vermont. We added two more. We've added University of Kansas because they have significant athletic programs and they are state universities. So we wanted to compare ourselves to them as well. And we added University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill because they have the medical school and hospital. So we wanted to compare ourselves how we compare to university that is ahead of us. And it's our Aspirin University that has strong athletic program and has a hospital as a part of the operation.
Great. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful to understand those additions, and I will ask OPM where they came up with those other institutions. Switching gears a little bit, you just detailed with Representative Haddad the changes to fringe and how that impacts. And frankly, I think it blurs the lines for this committee in understanding the full impact of state appropriations on the university and our other institutions of public higher education. And it makes it really difficult to follow the numbers. And I think there's a lot of inaccurate information out there about your budget, particularly in the last couple of years. So could you please tell us how you spent the one-time funds over the last 4 years, the ARPA dollars and the other appropriations that you were given to meet the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the budget deficits that the state of Connecticut's budget have created for you?
I will have Jeff Gagan to give you all the details. But as I said, in last 4 years for mental health, we invested from 10 million to 25 million. So mental health is a huge priority for us. Scholarship and financial aid are huge priority for us. And I will have Jeff to elaborate.
Yes, Senator, on that, 100% of the state support that we actually get does go towards salaries. So we actually take that. Currently now it has changed. Instead of paying people out of the general fund, we actually get that money deposited in, and it goes, for lack of a better term, into our checking account. So we've utilized that, the increases that we've seen since fiscal 22, and basically permanent salary increases that go across the board. We've been able to utilize all of our funding, our permanent funding, but plus the ARPA funding. For example, at UConn Health helps to keep open access to our patients by helping defer the salaries for our physicians. And then the one-time funds are the same thing. They actually are just focused on, the overall salaries that we have as an institution. But with that, we do have a slide. It's on page 12 that just goes over some of the aspect. But you can see on the bottom, the state support for salaries covers about 26% of our total salaries. So out of our workforce, 74% is provided by all of our other revenue streams. And the major, of course, on that is student tuition and then net patient revenue on UConn Health.
Oh,
Thank you.
all set, Senator Flexer?
No, I'm not. I have 2 more questions.
I have some other people for the first time too. Can they speak and then you come back to you?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think 2 questions really quickly. When Representative Haddad was asking the question, kind of like offsetting, I'm not sure I understood your answer. So he was getting at kind of how do you make up what would be a kind of whole? Is it because you're so attractive that you get more students that you don't actually have to worry about what we might see as something missing there in terms of funding? Is that how it works?
No, we worry. And to attract the students, we are all the time out. We promote the quality of education. We promote the quality of our faculty. We promote the quality of our facility. We promote the quality of the Connecticut state and what it means to be student in Connecticut and what kind of the jobs you have to have.
Can I just clarify? Because I don't think you actually understood what I was asking. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I don't want you going down a path that's not useful. I guess my question was, is all of that stuff you talk about, does it allow you to bring in enough students that you won't obviously worry, but that you're okay with the change in a way that maybe the regionals aren't?
I'm not sure that I fully understood your question. So is your question that if I enroll more students, I don't have the budget crisis or I don't have this deficit to mitigate?
Question is it the students that allow you to continue to operate? I know you have some level of crisis, but it seems different than the impact of that change on the other system that we have.
So I believe the answer probably is yes, that we are in a different aspect of our budget and our planning. We are looking to increase the number of students. And again, with the record high of applications that we have, looking to actually take more students, not only at stores, but through all of our campuses around the state. So in doing so, one of the aspects is our 5-year plan put together. We do need to increase spending on the instructional side. So looking forward of, do we have the right amount of faculty to actually teach the students? And then also of one note, the governor was put in his budget additional support on the capital side, which will help us, especially in the deferred maintenance, maintain and continue the learning spaces for, again, across all of our campuses in there. So as our plan is, it's really how do we balance everything? So we can't just take all the students we'd like because of the limitations we have in the actual bricks and mortar and our number of faculty. So our plan is to be able to increase the students and actually increase our revenue side at the appropriate rate over the next 5 years to help part of the balance of fixing this by increasing revenues on the student side.
So to make it short, the answer is yes, we need additional support and we need 64 million that we ask for with all the numbers that we put together and all the measures that we are applying.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the first time? Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to switch gears for just a moment and ask, Dr. Liang, you were talking about the increases in revenue at UConn Health, and I think it's always important to note in this meeting every year that the UConn Health Center is the only public healthcare institution, public hospital in the state of Connecticut that you have patients from, I believe, every town in the state of Connecticut, and there are thousands of our constituents who can't get healthcare anywhere else. So can you talk a little bit more about the numbers that you shared in this presentation?
Thank you very much, Senator. Yes, indeed, we have patients from every one of 169 towns in the state of Connecticut. A lot of them pass their local hospitals to come to us. And for the reason that they can get better access, and of course, we believe very excellent quality, which is supported by all the awards and recognition we're getting from national independent watchdogs, such as patient safety, quality, Newsweek, best hospitals in the world, 1 of 5 in Connecticut. So the quality and the access attracts those patients to come to us. And it's a form of safety net care because we don't delay ortho, spine, neuro, cardiac, or vascular surgery for these patients, even though they may be not able to afford the care because of their insurance status, being underinsured or uninsured. But we don't worry about that. We just take all those patients as they come with the same access and quality. And some of the safety net care that we provide include sickle cell patients, including dental health, mental health, poison control. These are actually unique services that we provide that's actually not provided by the private community of providers. And we have cost this out. We actually incur a loss of $104 million every year to provide the service under the safety net care. So we don't think it's a subsidy that we're asking for the state for the clinical service. It's actually something that we do out of our operation, which we lose money for. And we do get some federal match dollars for the Medicaid, but that's much below the $104 million that we spend to provide or to want to continue to provide these safety net care. I don't know if that answers your question,
It does.
Senator.
It does. Thank you. And
Thank you.
perhaps for the working group, it would be helpful to have more information about how UConn's operation of UConn Health compares with these other institutions you've been asked to compare yourself to. And I'm particularly interested in how UConn Health functions very differently than UMass. And again, not for today, but for
Okay.
the working group.
Got it.
President Merrick, you talked about everything that you're doing is with students first. That is the motto of the university. And I have a somewhat pointed question for you. And with recognition that the reason you have to move forward with the choices that you're making is largely due to the choices this body and the executive branch have made in terms of how much state money goes to the university. But how is a 15% cut going to help you put students first?
It is going to be difficult because it will be less advisors. It will be less mentors. It will be larger classes. It will be longer time to degree. So we will drop for 4.1 being number one to maybe 5-6 years you will graduate because you will not be able to get in the classes. So it's going to have the consequences.
Yeah, that's actually, those are some of my biggest concerns that we continually hear from everyone associated with the university. The change in the ratio, faculty to student ratio, in our earlier hearing during this session of this committee, we were told that that was something that should rise, that it was a good thing for the university to meet its budget needs by raising the faculty to student ratio. That will have a direct impact in the length of time it takes a student to graduate.
Correct.
You said that UConn at 4.1 years was among the
Number
shortest in
one,
the
yes.
number one in the country.
Correct.
And so when this 5-year plan, if it has to be instituted, because this legislature continues to underfund the University of Connecticut, what will that 4.1 be? What will the faculty to student ratio be in 5 years? And how will that impact the top 25, the top 30 ranking that you have, the top 9 ranking? How will that change those metrics?
I would like we have our provost and Deliva, and if Anne can answer that question, because she does the thorough analysis with her team and looking all these numbers.
Thank you, President Merrick. So this is very worrisome. Thank you for the question, Senator. We've done a lot of modeling about the impact of the budget cut over the next 5 years. Our student to faculty ratio could go up as high as 21-1, which would be among the highest in the country among research public universities. And as President Merrick said, that would slow down our students' time to degree. It would burden our faculty. It would take time away from research. It would change our research and teaching balance. And it would upset a balance that is working so well right now for our students and for the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. And my last question is, it's unfortunate that we're having to have this scarcity mindset, this negative set of circumstances that you're all dealing with. And instead, I wish that right now, this university was talking about the continued growth and the continued pursuit of excellence that you've endured for, or that you've put forward for many decades. So in a more positive vein, if we actually stepped up and funded public higher education the way it should be, in my view, in the state of Connecticut, what could you be doing? If we weren't having this scarcity conversation, this conversation about a 15% cut across the board to all departments, a 5% increase in tuition costs for every student at your university, what could you be doing? I see here in your presentation, the impact that UConn has on our state's economy, $7.8 billion, the number of first generation students like I once was at UConn, the students whose lives that you're changing. What could you be doing if we weren't here every year begging just for the bare minimum to operate UConn at the excellent level you've been doing so?
I would like Anne to start, and then I will continue from the big picture.
Thank you. We are passionate about student success. And we are passionate about holistic student success. And so for students to succeed, their academics is at the center, and our students come to us. We often say that our UConn students, yes, they want to do well, but they also want to do good. So we see so many UConn students flooding into the health professions because they want to have an impact on our state, flooding into teaching, flooding into public service. Our students, especially as we bring in more first generation and Pell eligible students and create the pathway to opportunity that we want in Connecticut, those students need more supports, right? To achieve student success, they need advising, they need coaching, they need mentoring, they need career services. And to provide this holistic student support, we need those professionals who can be there working with our students, complementing their academic experience and helping them grow and segue out. When we look at the number of UConn students who stay in the state, either for employment or for further education, they are the next generation. They are building our state, and that's what we want to do. That is our mission as a land-grant institution, is to build the state of Connecticut.
And I would like to say and add to that, to focus on the standing opportunity for those left behind. I'm very focused on the regional campuses. I always think that Connecticut is wealthiest state with 20 poorest town. How we do the social mobility, how we change the lives of those communities, how we bring the high value jobs, how we educate, because we know that the startup high-tech companies are coming around the universities that have significant research, innovation, and entrepreneurship, how we change those community. So for me, it is social mobility is a huge thing that we could do and do much more if we don't spend time of thinking, dollar here, dollar there. I'm always about, fiscal responsibility and accountability, but we also have to have aspirational goals for economy of this state. And the economy of this state depends on the people that we educate. It's a future of our students, and it's a future of our state.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Representative Kennedy.
I apologize. There's one more question. President Merrick, you indicated in your opening speech that you cut positions. Were those due to retirement and just not filled positions? Just for clarity.
Yes, those are not filled positions. So when somebody
Because someone
retires,
retired?
yes. So
Okay.
now we are sending all the position to provost, and provost reviews all the position. We look the enrollment, and then based on the provost discussions with deans, the size of the classes and everything, we decide which position to refill and which position we can retire.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And second question, and I'll be done. I appreciate the opportunity. You're in the CBAC, correct? Has there ever been thought given to starting your own bargaining union?
So I think just for clarification, we have, I believe, 9 unions across all of our campuses.
Okay.
With those 9, we have 4 that are not part of CBAC directly, that actually the institution does the negotiation for. So our faculty, both AAUP at Farmington and Stores, and then our professional employees, we have UCP at Stores and UHP at Farmington campus. So we're kind of half and half. So there are a number of our employees that are in statewide unions that are will go through this normal CBAC process. But a majority of our employees are through those 4 unions, which we actually negotiate ourselves.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just a quick comment to address the very large elephant in the room that we haven't addressed. And about every mid-January, we see throughout municipalities in the state, the highest paid employees throughout the state. And just UConn is up there. I don't mean that in any kind of a disparaging way in any way, but it is something to address that, and we do appreciate everything that you do, but I see it in my own municipalities where we are with salary. So I'm just have to address that elephant in the room.
Okay, I don't think we need to, I'm sorry, I'm going to step in.
Nope, I
That was a
apologize.
comment.
Thank
You don't
you.
need to respond, please. And I think we all have a difference of opinion on what the elephant in the room is, but and are you all set? We're all done now, Madam President?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your continuous
Seeing
support.
seeing no other questions, you are all set. Up next is going to be Chancellor Chang and CSCU and um and community colleges and the state universities. And for the interest of those who may be interested, we do have the Office of Policy Management Secretary. So if you have a question for him, he's sitting right over there. So because I think that Senator Flexer and Representative Haddad said they had questions for him, so they can go talk to him right now. Adam, someone's right behind you. Don't get by.
No casualties, please.
Yeah.
I'm just trying not to embarrass myself.
Well, I don't want anybody to be knocked over. You know, I got a broken leg myself, so I don't want anybody else to have it. Chancellor Chang, I don't know if you have any comments at the beginning or you want to go right into questions.
First, I just want to say thank you to the committee. I want to say thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for having us today. And I want to recognize that behind me are the presidents of our institutions. Obviously, this is a very important conversation, and I just want to thank them for making the time. So we're ready for your questions. Thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you. Representative Walker, do you have any questions for the Chancellor?
Sure, I thought we were gonna get nothing. That's
No.
okay. So we're all tired sitting. That's okay. It's good to see you all, and thank you for giving us the time and your thoughts on some of the things. I'm sure it was interesting to sit and listen to the conversations that was going on between us and UConn. And I think there are a lot of things in there that also very strongly affect the CSCU system. So I'm going to start out with one of the biggest questions that everybody seems to ask over and over again, and trying to understand what is the impact on the fringe costs that are being challenged in a variety of different ways, and how is it different in the impact with you with the UConn State University?
Thank you for the question, Representative Walker. It's a really important
Yeah.
item in our whole position right now. So I want to state very clearly that we started fiscal year 24 with a deficit system-wide of approximately $26 million. That includes the deficits as well as the surpluses across all of our institutions. Through an incredible amount of hard work, dedication, and really tough situations, we've been able to mitigate that. For fiscal year 25, we are looking at approximately $140 million projected budget deficit for FY 25. And again, through the incredible doggedness, determination, hard work, and very tough decisions of our leaders and folks all the way down to across to the faculty and staff level, we have been able to mitigate over $100 million of that $140 million budget deficit.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I could say a little louder, please.
Of course, we have mitigated for FY 25 over $100 million of the projected $140 million deficit. I have to note that approximately $75 million of that $140 million deficit is due to the calculation of fringe according to the new approach and methodology. And so certainly there are ways that we need to evolve. We need to continue to adjust to the market. We need to continue to adjust to the needs of the 21st century and the needs of our state. That being said, I must be very clear that the way the state calculates fringe now creates a very large burden on our system.
Could your CFO please explain it to us how? That's what I want to hear.
Absolutely.
So, good morning. Can you hear me?
Please
So-
introduce yourself, sir, please.
Oh, yes, I am Dr. Lloyd Blanchard. I'm the CFO of the CSCU System Office and System. As it relates to OPM's change in methodology for calculating fringe, it is correct that the idea was to have the state take on all retirement costs of the fringe benefits and have higher ed, public higher ed, take on the non-retirement costs of our employees. And so if by swapping, making sure the state covers the retirement costs and the universities and the higher ed covers the non-retirement costs, if those costs were equal, it would be no problem. If the change, led to a big loss, the state OPM said that they would fill that loss. That was their definition of budget neutrality. But their definition of budget neutrality did not take into account the fact that last year, FY23, we paid $154 million for fringe. This year, FY24, we're being asked to pay for $129 million. So their methodology may well have worked well for UConn, but it did not work for CSCU at all because it left a $75 million hole in our budget in FY24. And because the cost would increase to $136 million in FY25, the impact on the FY25 budget would be $82 million.
I think that you have a slide that could explain this. Is that true?
Do you control of the slides?
If we ask
Madam Administrator, can you allow CSCU to share their screen?
Be slide 16.
Does somebody have a computer there? Yeah.
Maybe Madam
No,
Administrator.
She's.
Madam Administrator, what needs to happen is that someone from the CSCU system needs to log into the Zoom link and then they can share. I cannot share the slides.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're accessing the slide
Okay,
as we speak.
just give it, look.
So
Mhm.
shall I wait on?
I think
No, go right ahead. Go
Okay.
right ahead.
So let me be more specific. In FY23, which is the sort of last year where we had the old methodology, we received fringe revenues from the state to the tune of $396 million. That $396 million in revenue were meant to help us cover $450 million in fringe costs. So the difference between those two is $54 million. That's what CSCU, those are the costs that CSU bore. And of course, we only receive revenues from either our students or the state. So the $54 million was borne by our tuition and fee lines. In FY24, now mind you, the revenue we received from the state in FY23 was $396. In FY24, that number is $42 million. Now, we understand that the cost of, the fringe costs were taken away from us. So it's appropriate that the state would support us with fewer fringe dollars, but not far fewer fringe dollars. So while in FY24, it provided $42 million, our costs went up, as I said before, from 54 to $171 million. So the difference between that 42 and the 171 is $129 million. That's how much the tuition and fees have to pay for fringe. And in FY25, that same $42 million will be provided to the CSCU universities and colleges, but our fringe costs will go up to $178 million. The difference between the 42 and the 178 million is 136 million. That is the amount that we have to bear. That is the amount that our students have to pay through their tuition and fees. And the slide, the previous slide, just highlighted what I just said.
Yep.
Not that slide, the previous one, please.
Thank you, and I will come back with my follow-up question. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions? Representative Paris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, good Dr. CFO, thank you all so much for being here. CSCU system has an acceptance rate of about 71%. A percentage of that acceptance rate is about 96% of our state residents, which I think is rather incredible. I was a part of the 4%, just that no one thinks I'm being biased here, of course. 70% of those students stay in our state after they graduate. And the entire system has about $335 million right now in unauthorized but not allocated funds for capital projects across the campuses, 50 million of which are for safety and health buildings and capital projects. You don't have to confirm any of those things because I know it to be true. So I'm going to get to my question, but I just wanted that to be on the record for people to know how important the investment and impact of the system is for our state. So your system has requested $47.6 million roughly in the state budget for this upcoming fiscal year. And your deficit mitigation plan assumes that the system will get these funds. I think it's really important for all those at home and certainly for those on this committee to understand what the impact will be on staff and students and faculty if you do not get those funds allocated to you through the system.
I appreciate the question, Representative Paris. Unfortunately, we have done an analysis and begun planning for what might happen. We do not take anything for granted in this process. We know that it is a difficult, arduous process. We don't take that for granted at all, that we would receive additional funds. At the community colleges, we've worked very hard, and President Maduco, who is here today, has worked very hard with his team to really go through what these scenarios would look like. In short, there would be additional non-reappointments of part-time staff of over 300 non-reappointments of part-time staff, and potentially we would have to look at laying off approximately 300 or more than 300 full-time staff as well. This would certainly be a financial crisis if the community colleges were looking at an additional $40 million of deficit on top of the mitigation that they are already doing. This would be an absolute code red DEFCON 1 situation. And so that would hit every single part of the operation: academic, student support, facilities, every single component. Similarly, at Western Connecticut State University, you would be looking at a very similar unfortunate trajectory. There would have to be conversations around the elimination of academic programs, key academic programs, mind you, because the most expensive academic programs to run are also the programs that are most important to the state's workforce, like manufacturing, like healthcare, and so forth. So we would have to look at that. We would have a serious problem with facilities where Western is already, frankly, struggling.
Right.
We would have additional, soft spots and worse in IT. And again, what we would see is a massive downgrade in the quality and the stability of the education that we could and should and need to provide to those who need it the most.
I appreciate that. And I have a second question. And I think it is critical that we continue to build a system for students and families, not the other way around. And given all that you have said, the services that largely would be provided on in terms of supporting students who need them most and for higher education is a way to break generational curses, to build or break down impoverished or build down, destroy poverty across our state. Why aren't you asking for more money?
Because we want to be very mindful and very reasonable in terms of how we're approaching this. Our other institutions, unfortunately, have done the kind of work needed because of the baseline that they were beginning from to be able to at least stabilize and be, break even right now. And so we don't want to come to the state and ask for funds that are not absolutely necessary at this time. That being said, there are deficiencies in a variety of areas. And so, we have made a very conscientious, decision to come to you with exactly what we need, being mindful of the fact that our organization is scrutinized for every nickel and every dime that we spend. And so we do not want to be cavalier or frugal in our request.
I would hope that you are cavalier when it comes to 96% of our state being able to go to these institutions, which would support 100% of our workforce in the future. But I might be biased. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll wait for the second time.
Thank you. Up next is Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna start start where that exchange left off. I am confused about that answer. I know that the system has been making adjustments and cuts for a number of years, and given its population currently, it's more minoritized population. It clearly cannot do currently what it needs to do for those populations. So the things that you've already done have made it more difficult, not because you intend to, but because there are folks who don't understand that we're dealing with an education system, not a company. And so even if you get the money you're asking for, is it not true that you're not able to do what those populations need currently?
It's an excellent point, Senator, and I just want to be clear that the 47.6 million that we're asking for is literally just to cover the deficit. I don't want to give the impression, and it is unfortunate if I did, and I apologize for that. I don't want to give the impression that the 47.6 million will make all of our concerns and problems go away. It absolutely will not. It is there, the request is there to cover the budget deficit that we see right now for FY25 that we have not been able to cover. We have been told explicitly that we need to live within our means. We are working with the budget that was signed into law last year. We are working with what was appropriated to us, and we are trying to do right by that. And so that 47.6 is literally only meant to balance the budget. But I think to your point, Senator, and to all of you, of course, our students, our faculty, our staff deserve so much more. And if we look at the history of our budget, going back to 2007, 2008, the way the budget has been balanced has literally been through the use of one-time funding, and that is pre-COVID. And so when the state's coffers were not full, our faculty and our staff were told to do more with less. And now that the state is actually doing quite well, they're once again being told to do more with less. I completely empathize with that frustration, having spent my entire career in public higher education. And so we are trying to be good partners within the state and be clear with our positions, but certainly we need for the long-term future, the sustainability and the viability for us to serve the populations that literally would not be served otherwise. Our faculty and our staff, listen, we don't agree on a lot of things sometimes. Okay, it's just to be very blunt. But the one thing we agree on is that our students deserve the best. They deserve a heck of a lot better than what we give them. And at the end of the day, we are on the same team when it comes to trying to provide the best education for those students that cannot go to the flagship, that cannot go to the privates. And so we are here to advocate for our official ask, but we are certainly in a position to make clear that without long-term sustainable, viable funding, our system will continue to be in a very dangerous and precarious position. So thank you, Senator. Thank you for helping me sharpen.
Thank you, Chancellor. And I would just say the same thing to you that I say to everybody that comes before this committee, asking us for less than what they need. Being a good partner is one thing. Hitting the mission is more important to me. The mission is to make sure that there's opportunity for those populations that are being ill-served by the way that this state has chosen to operate here. We are doing things that are making it less, not tomorrow when we walk out of here and have a new budget, but we're doing things right now that are making it less possible for these people to get out of our system, to be successful. It's taking longer. People are leaving. They can't get the classes they need because we don't have those classes. We have a class, but we don't have the class when we need it. It makes no sense to me to ask for less than what we want. And if there's somebody who thinks that this is just about living within a budget, they don't understand what the future of this state looks like. And so I appreciate the work you've done, but somebody needs to explain why they think the choices we're making make any sense for the people of this state.
Thank you, Senator. I always appreciate your candor and your honesty.
Thank you. Next, Representative Datham.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. President, for not just coming out today, but really spending time with the legislature this autumn and opening up the campuses of all of the state colleges, the community colleges, for legislators to come and visit, see what the students are experiencing every day. So just wanted to say thank you to your team for that. My question really is around the I really was appreciative to see your presentation and how you highlighted with those little stars the high need workforce areas in our state, and that you have, it seems like, really have changed your focus to ensure that we are focusing on those areas. In terms of any sort of availabilities of jobs in those areas where we have shortfalls in people coming out of your programs that are trained but not yet having jobs, do you have any sort of analyses of unemployment data in those areas for people who are getting those degrees that are identified by the Governor's Workforce Council?
Thank you for the question. So workforce and workforce development, I know those are terms that sound highly bureaucratized. At the end of the day, our mission is to give as many Connecticut residents a great education, to do right by them, and ultimately help them to get a job, to have a great career, to lift up their lives, to lift up their families' lives, to raise them socioeconomically, and to create generational compounding wealth. That is how we disrupt cycles of poverty. That is how we ultimately advance our communities and our society. And so it's a game of connect the dots in some ways, right? We have the tools, we have the assets here. When it comes to matching our students and the incredible talent that we have, again, serving over 85,000 individuals and conferring more than 12,000 degrees and credentials every single year, we have to do a continually better job of connecting our wonderful graduates to the workforce opportunities across the state. In that vein, we work very closely with the Office of Workforce Strategy. We are members of the Governor's Workforce Council, and we also work very closely with the Department of Labor. We are looking at partners in both within industry and within our communities and government to try to create as many pathways and pipelines as possible. It is one of the things that literally a system like ours, with the right support, the right funding, that matches our ambition and that matches our vision to reach that shared North Star, we can and should be building a structure that will train, educate, and feed as many of those folks into the wonderful jobs here in Connecticut. But it is, again, an example of where we need investment. We are being put in a position to try to do more for workforce, to do more for the advancement of economic and community development, and yet our funding is being reduced drastically. And it is almost impossible to continue to build and to be ambitious and to literally generate that kind of positive impact when all we're facing is continual rounds of reduction after reduction after reduction. And so to the question, yes, there is a plan. There are partnerships. We are working with industry. We have great partners like Hartford Healthcare, with whom we signed an MOA earlier this year. We've worked with Accenture, Synchrony. We've worked with so many different companies across the state, ASML, we've been in conversations with, but not just the big companies. It's also the smaller size companies, the private, smaller companies in manufacturing. Not always Sikorsky or Electric Boat. It's all the folks that Sikorsky and Electric Boat will work with to generate all that kind of work that's so important. We are in conversations with all of them, but we need the support to continue to advance that, because we cannot make bricks without straw. And that is what we're here for today.
Thank you very much. That's exactly my point, in that we are having to do more with less, and we're not able to achieve the goals that are set out by the Office of Workforce Strategy and Development to ensure that we are preparing our young people for the jobs of tomorrow by not funding our programs. We'd love to see any sort of report or data that you could bring to the work group on that. I'd appreciate it. My second question really is around the consolidation of the community colleges. I had quite a bit of concerns about that. And I know it's a relatively new thing. Do you have any sort of data or reports on the status of how that's going so far, in terms of the cost savings that were introduced to us back, I think it was in 2019 legislature, where we started talking about the cost savings associated with that. Are we going to realize those cost savings, or do you think that we have some issues for that consolidation that we will not be able to realize these entities?
Thank you again for the question. So the first thing I would say is that 2019 is pre-pandemic, and the world, obviously, we know has changed significantly in that time. That said, our mission, our vision, our values for who we serve and how we serve them has not changed. And so since the concept and the building of the consolidated or merged community college, things have certainly changed. We believe that we have we have increased access. We have increased opportunity. We have reduced barriers so that more students can access education. And through incredible programs such as PACT, they can do so at our community colleges for free. And I think that is something that we should all be very proud of. And I think it's something that we are incredibly thankful to this legislature for. We can't speak to some of the figures and some of the decisions that were made by the previous administration previous to my arrival. That said, the goal is still to try to reduce unnecessary overhead, to try to reduce elimination, to try to keep decision-making and identity and character of the individual campuses, to maintain that, to retain that, and to build into that. And so one of the things that President Maduco and his team and I have talked very much about, and he has been very public about, is how they have gone about reducing their budget deficit for this current fiscal year and how they've approached that work for next fiscal year. The figures that were presented back in 2019, they may not necessarily reconcile exactly with where we are right now, but we're doing everything we can to be fiscally responsible, to be transparent, and to ultimately align every single dollar with the value and with the impact. And some of the figures that President Maduco has been able to share with us and to be very public about as we've been meeting with legislators and community leaders is the amount of access that so many students are now enjoying across this CT State community college system. It is a system within a system, and they've done a great job of offering not only in-person classes, but hybrid classes, online classes. And again, the demographics and the dynamics of the student body and the needs of that student body has changed. And so I would simply urge that we continue to have this conversation and share data so that we can be very honest and open about where we are, what we're doing, and how we're doing it. We do believe that ultimately this new approach and having one of the largest community colleges in the Northeast that we should be very proud of is going to yield more efficiency. But at the same time, the institution is literally less than a half a year old. And so we have to give that time.
Thank you. I think if you can share with the working group sort of information you have about increased outcomes and improved outcomes for our students, I think that would be really helpful to see.
Yes.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. And I just want to quickly tag on to some of the things that you didn't even talk about, like the number of dual credits and number of high schools that are getting opportunity to know that college is in their future, the number of workforce development programs that you've developed where we are partnering with businesses in the communities to develop the desire to go into a higher education. Those are the grassroots type of education that you provide. And I'm sorry, I should not jump in. I apologize. I'm sorry, Senator Flexer. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Representative Haddad. I got a little emotional. Sorry, my bad.
Contrary to popular belief, we're not interchangeable, but sometimes people think. First, I just want to say thank you for your testimony, and thank you. The questions aren't directed at the 5 presidents who are sitting behind you, but your presence is. I want to acknowledge. Thank you for being here. It shows, a commitment to your individual institutions and to the students you serve, and so we appreciate it. I wanted to ask you first just about tuition changes in your system, and if you could give us both a percentage and a dollar amount impact to students about what you've done in terms of, just revenue enhancements in terms of tuition increases.
Sure. I'll ask CFO Blanchard to chime in 1 second, but I'll just say that last year we had to increase tuition by approximately 5% across the board. And this year we just voted again to increase tuition another 5%. That's a massive burden on our students. And it is a painful decision that our board had to make. But when we look at the situation we're in, a system like ours only has so many levers. We either have the state support with a balance for tuition revenue, or we don't. And when we don't have it on one side, we have to increase the tuition side of the equation. So I'll ask CFO Blanchard to chime in with some more detail.
Good morning, Representative Haddad. Good to see you again. As Chancellor mentioned, we raised tuition last year by 5%. That was largely in response to the challenges we face with regard to state support, whether it's fringe methodology driven or whether it's the reduction of ARPA funds. All funds work for us, and we use them to keep the cost on the students low. If the challenge we face also, as you know, we face serious enrollment declines. Our students are those students who are much more sensitive to price. So every time the state reduces support, we have to raise tuition and fees, enrollment further declines. And so it's a bit of a vicious circle that we're in. We would hope that the state would support its regional colleges at an appropriate level so that that kind of a vicious cycle does not spiral.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So the percentage and the dollar amounts, though, that are being experienced by students, and then actually you're going exactly where I was going to go with a follow-up question. What sort of impact have you quantified the impact on potential enrollment and your projections in future years? And if you have, you're free to bring that to a work session as well.
We can bring something to the work session. It's a little tricky because there are factors that might increase enrollments, like more financial aid, and then there are factors that would decrease enrollment, like increases in tuition. And so we can try to decompose those factors and bring them to the subcommittee. But the percentage, it was a 5% increase that generates about $20 million.
Yeah, so it's about, I think a 5% increase to the community college student is about 246. I mean, that's with tuition and fees. I just don't have the figure at the top of my mind about what it is for the CSUs. My guess is
I want to
guess.
We have the figures. We will bring them to committee, but for the community colleges, it's approximately $300 per student that would end up paying that if they weren't part of the PACT or something to that effect. It's about $300, and I think for the university, it's about $500 per student. And, that's a significant amount of money when you're talking about, the students that come from, the sociodemographics that we are talking about.
Great. Earlier today, we talked a little bit about the percentage of overall expenditures that are covered by the state for UConn. And I have some figures in front of me, again, because I asked for some data from the Office of Fiscal Analysis. And I just wanted to throw those out because mainly I want to know what these figures are at peer institutions. And so when we come to a working group, a meeting, these numbers shouldn't be compared to UConn. UConn has a very different mission and purpose, and the presence of research activity at the University of Connecticut significantly changes these percentages as well. But but I think that this year at the CSUs, state revenue as a percent of expenditures is about 25%. If you include the one-time revenues, that increases to 40%. But the 25% in terms of a sustainable ongoing support is a 14% decline since 2011 at the 14 percentage points. So it used to be 39%, now it's 25%. At the community colleges, I think in 2011, it was 54%, and now it's down to 45%, a 9-point decline. And that's a concern, I think, to me and to everybody. Still, at the community colleges, again with the ARPA dollars included, that number actually increases to 62%, according to numbers I have, if you could verify those, that would be very helpful to me. I can give you this spreadsheet and you can take a look at it. The reason why I am, I'm raising that now though is the difference between 45% and 62% in one-time revenues. A large portion of that is the remaining allocation of ARPA dollars. I think you're allocated to get 82 or $83 million in fiscal year 25. That allocation is anticipated to be zero in fiscal year 26. And so I think as we look at your budget this year, as for all institutions of higher education, we need to do as best we can for you because more is coming. I don't know how long we can sustain, students could sustain, 5% tuition increases year over year over year, in a system that to this point has been unable, though I know that you have a lot of strategies in place to fill seats and not see that enrollment decline. But I think you're right. I think your students are very sensitive to tuition increases and dealing with the loss of revenue that comes from students in tuition dollars because of a declining enrollment is a double challenge to deal with, as you're also dealing with a loss of state appropriated dollars. So if you could come prepared to the working group to address those issues, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Senator Flexa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. I want to pick up where Representative Haddad left off. Can you talk a little bit about, and I know you promised Representative Haddad that you would bring this to the working group, but it'd be really helpful to know, at what point students start to be turned away from these tuition increases. I think you've stated it well this morning, and I think it would be hard to understate how drastic these tuition increases, what the drastic impact it will have on the decisions that many students and their families are making, whether they're students at the community colleges or at the state universities. It is the difference between whether or not these students can continue enrolling. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit in particular about the Pell eligible students and the students at the community college system, because I think it's important, and we've been trying to highlight this in recent weeks. I think it's important for people to understand, a lot of people will look at a Pell Grant, right, and say it's X amount of dollars and a community college costs X amount of dollars less than that. And so what's the problem? It's easy for those students who are Pell eligible to afford these tuition increases. But I think it's hard to understate how much that extra money in that Pell Grant, how important that is to the student and their families being able to make the choice to even be in college in the first place, because they use the difference between the community college tuition and the full Pell Grant to pay for their books, to pay for some of their living expenses. Can you talk a little bit in more detail about that?
Senator, you're hitting it right on the head, which is that I think the general population might at times take for granted with some arithmetic, right? And say if tuition is X and the Pell Grant is Y, then you're covered, you're fine. And that's clearly not the case. Our students have incredible levels of need at all different, in all different arenas of their lives. And our students are also the ones that are in the most precarious positions because they're literally making the decision between, do I work more to make more money, or do I work less to go to school and actually pay money to try to make more for my family and for myself in the future? And it's a horrible place to be. And that's where I think if we can come up with a balanced approach to how we can support the literally hundreds of thousands of people who are out there who are looking to make their lives better through education. And we are still the single most prominent, most effective driver of the workforce and of the economy. We couldn't agree with you more there. I don't know if CFO Blanchard had some thoughts or comments on Pell students. Okay, not at this time. We will certainly bring that information more explicitly and in more detail to the working group.
Great.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And related to the experience of community college students, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. This might be a tough question that I'm about to ask
okay.
you. But
Here for.
I've actually heard from numerous constituents that are really concerned about so many things that are happening at our community colleges
Sure.
because of the choices this legislature and the executive branch have made to underfund your system. I want to be clear that the responsibility is on us, in my opinion, not on you. But there are no cafeterias in your community colleges anymore, if I'm not mistaken, or very few are open, if any. And so students, they go to school for the day and they have vending machines at best. Is that true? And if you can't answer it now, that's okay. We could talk about it more in the working group. But I just want to,
Sure.
again, another example of how we have greatly impacted the quality of life. You expect someone to spend, their whole day at an institution, and you want to call it a school, and there's no cafeteria?
Yes, I appreciate you bringing it up because it is a painful reality. It is not true that every single one of our community college campuses does not have a cafeteria, but it is unfortunate that we have had to reduce food services. We have had to reduce other services because of the fact that we are trying to work within the boundaries of this budget. We are trying to do the best that we can, but unfortunately, the best that we can do with this budget is literally not good enough and not what our students deserve. We've had to reduce fitness center hours. We have had to non-reappoint folks who have done a great job with career advising or with academic advising or with mental health support. We've had to reduce student services. There is no way to say it other than that it has hurt to be able to live within the means of this budget. And when I say it hurts us, it doesn't necessarily mean it hurts us as administrators. It hurts our students. This hits our students. It hits their ability to get an education, to stay within the range of achieving the education that they're striving for. And when we listen to the testimony of our students later today and this evening, we're going to hear viscerally and firsthand what they go through, the single parents, or the folks that are already working 1 or 2 or even 3 jobs to try to make their lives better. And exactly to your point, we can't even mount the ability to give them a fresh salad or a sandwich at this point. What are we telling them when we provide them these types of operations and facilities? What are we saying to them? And it breaks our hearts. And it is why we are here so passionately trying to make our case. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. And along that same vein, in slide 8 of your presentation, I want to talk about another impact of
Senator Flex, I'm
budget
wondering
cuts.
if we could go to somebody else while you hold on after your second question.
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Up next is Representative Paris. Representative Hoxa, who's online.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, quick question. I attended one of your informational sessions over at Tunxus a couple weeks ago, and you spoke a lot about offering students wraparound services. Can you explain a little bit to this committee what that means and how much roughly does that account for in your budget? And just as a quick follow-up to that, are wraparound services supposed to basically mean that well, how about you answer the first part of that question, and then if you don't answer my second question in that first question, I'll ask it. So, but basically, can you explain what wraparound services are and how much how much as a part of the budget are those services?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So wraparound services are basically how we frame the national best practice of supporting students outside of the classroom. Yeah. They need academic advising, they need career counseling, they need mental health support, they need mentors. And so a wraparound service, which has been essentially in effect for some time now for opportunity students and for, let's say, student athletes, honors program students, those cohorts of students have literally statistically been proven to perform at an even higher level. Their graduation rates, their retention rates, and ultimately their career penetration is greater with those wraparound services. And so what we've tried to do at both the community colleges and as well at our universities is to provide wraparound services as much as possible in as many ways as possible, because we know it is proven to help students. And it is even more necessary for students that come from socioeconomically challenged backgrounds, that they get those kinds of supports. So we know that it works. In terms of the percentage of the budget, whether it's for the community colleges or for at our universities, it's not a detail we have at this time, but we're happy to take it to the working group and we'll get you a sharper answer on that.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I mean, that's what I thought it meant. Which, you know, to me, I understand that to mean that we are essentially creating an environment for students where, you know, it doesn't sound like they have too much skin in the game if every single one of the aspects of their life, of their living is going to be covered by the university, and all they have to do is show up and attend class. I mean, I understand that, you know, in a perfect world, we want to create an environment that's the most conducive to learning. But, you know, my opinion is that doesn't really set them up too well for the real world, where you have to pay for your own gas and you have to pay for your own lunch, and, you know, not everything can be subsidized. So I really would be curious to see, you know, how much, you know, all that costs as a dollar figure. You know, because that's, you know, something that just philosophically I don't necessarily agree with, but then again, I'd have to see the numbers to see to what extent we're spending on those things. So, with that said, I don't have any more questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I may respond quickly, because I think it's an interesting point. When we juxtapose, you know, I'm in my 50s, although I know I'm 25, but I am in my 50s. And so, come on, Representative Paris, be nice, Representative Paris. There you go. I went to college a while ago. Things were different. I'm sure many of us in this room and watching this hearing could say that. I will tell you that having been in public higher education, working in urban environments, serving in majority minority institutions in New York and here in Connecticut, that the 21st century student is very different than the student that I was 30 years ago and the students that we may think we are comparing our current students to today. They need different things. They have been affected. They have literally been affected and grown up with school shootings and drills for school shootings. They have been affected by COVID in ways that we cannot even begin to understand today because it's not over yet. But we know that they have been massively affected by that. And they have also been affected by the pressures of social media and growing up with completely different paradigms than what a student like myself, a person of color, a first-generation student, and so forth, has grown up with. So I think we have to continue to adapt and evolve to what our students need. I would not say that it's good enough for any of our students today to be satisfied with what I might have received in the 90s. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's realistic. I think we have to continue to look at our students and center ourselves, create the North Star of what is best for our students. And so if we know that wraparound services are going to help our students, the ones that are already, they're not starting at the starting line. They're starting 10 paces behind the starting line. And that is not a judgment. That is not a criticism. That is an observation. And I think we have to be fair and mindful of that if we're going to actually try to help them succeed. Thank you for the time.
Okay, can we go on to a question about the budget next? Representative Hoxha, are you all set?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Paris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm rather passionate about this, so excuse me if it shows in a different way, but I just want to clarify that there was one proposed strategy to achieve savings in order to help the system. Some of those points of that strategy includes, as my good colleague, Senator Flexer mentioned, the elimination of cafeterias. I believe 2 years ago, our state had 30% of its college students, which were identified as being food insecure. I imagine for your system, it's probably much higher than that. I want to move forward to the reduction of library hours. If I remember, there are students who cannot afford the books for their classes, so they do go to the libraries to get the curriculum that they need for their classes in order to pass. I want to move forward to the closing of the fitness centers. If we don't talk about the wellness and health of our students, how the heck are we going to make sure that they're going to be best prepared for life? Let me move forward to the reduction of tutoring services, because again, if kids need help in their classes, where the heck are they going to get that help from if we're reducing these services? Last but not least, the elimination. I did not say reduction. I said elimination of career service positions and the elimination of student hiring. All of these things are important, and I know this to be true because it was my very experience as a college student at Western Connecticut State University. If I did not work on campus, I could not pay for the food for the meal plan that I could not afford with the Pell Grant and federal financial aid. If I did not have the books that I could not afford, I wouldn't be able to go to the library. If I didn't have some place to blow off steam, I couldn't go to the wellness center. So this isn't a free-for-all for our students, both traditional and non-traditional. This is a way of life. This is critical. But as we're looking at a reduction in all of these services and all of these practices, my question is, how and what are we going to do in order to make up for that? Because it's going to affect the retention rate, which most of the schools are above 75% with the retention rate in the system. So how do we keep these schools and these students in place with less money going towards those services?
I don't think we can, Representative Paris. I mean, that's all there is to it. It pains me to say that, but this is where we are right now. Look at what we've already done. Look at what we're doing. And we fight and scrap every single day to mount the best education we can with the resources that we have. And I'm on campuses all the time. And what I like to do is I like to sneak around. I like to just walk around, although it's hard for a 6'2",
25-year-old,
25-year-old, 6'2" Asian man of my size to be discreet. But I look in the classrooms, I peek into the classrooms, I look at the facilities, I look up at the roof tiles, I look at the walls, I walk around the parking lots, because I want to see what our students see. I don't want to see the pretty shiny things on the tour. I want to see what our students see. And it makes me very sad. It makes me very sad that our faculty have to teach in certain conditions. It makes me very sad that our staff have to support our students in some of these conditions. And it makes me sad that our students, I fear, will begin to normalize that this is what they get. And ultimately, I fear that they're going to normalize this into what they deserve. And what we're going to do if we don't figure this out right, and this goes beyond whoever sits in the chancellor's seat or whoever is in a certain role. This is about the state, and this is about the people of the state for future generations. This will have a massive economic impact when we continue to further disenfranchise those that we want to call our workforce and our populace, our taxpayer base. We will continue to exacerbate the inequities that exist right now, and it is going to only hurt our system more and more. I've said it over and over again, and I will continue to say it. An investment in CSCU is an investment in Connecticut. We are the professionals, we are the nurses, the manufacturers, the teachers, the innovators and entrepreneurs. Every single office you walk in every single corner of this state is populated by our alumni who are making a massive impact, yourself included, Representative Paris, of course, and over 36 state legislators and state leaders. But if we don't continue to find a way to invest in a balanced, sustainable, and viable way, we are going to hurt the state in terms of the workforce. We are not going to fill the jobs. We are going to feel it in our taxpayer base. And ultimately, that percentage, right now, we're so proud that so many of our students, over 90% of our graduates, again, 12,000 people a year who get a degree or a credential from CSCU, over 90% of them will stay to live and work here in Connecticut. And so if we're not investing in that, then we are going to see a major detrimental shift.
Chancellor, I would have to tell you, and this will be my last comment, I'll leave the rest for my colleagues here on the committee. I would have to tell you, it upsets you, but it makes me, quite frankly, sick to my stomach. And I think that we should be ashamed of ourselves for not doing more for this system in one of the wealthiest states in this country. The fact that we have nearly 500,000 borrowers in this state with $19.5 billion in student loan debt, most of those being women. Most of the fact of the matter is we make this promise to our young people to go to college and make something of ourselves. But I walk into a building on one of your campuses and the roof is falling through the building. People are taking nursing labs in a room, so you have a leaking roof. So I think that it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to do better. And I think we should be ashamed of ourselves. Madam Chair, I yield the rest of my time back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Senator Flexer for the second time. Sorry, I had to interrupt you before.
It's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks for the second chance. I wanted to ask a question about slide 9. And again, it relates to the conversation we've just been having about all of the cuts in terms of what students get and what their experiences at your community colleges or at the state universities. And so can you just talk a little bit more? It says here that 65% of your employees are part-time employees. And it details how your employee count is down. When you're trying to cut, where on earth are you going to get the cuts from in terms of cutting employees when 2/3 of your employees are already part-time? And in this legislature, for more than a decade, we've been trying to have a meaningful conversation about the ratio between, particularly at the community colleges, between students and the number of advisors that you have. What we've done in the last couple of years must be pushing us in the exactly wrong direction. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
We can't provide the commensurate ratio that nationally the best practices would tell us to in this environment. It's incredibly hard to do so. If we can do it in certain pockets, we're very happy and very proud. And you see the statistics rise for student success in those cases, but overall it's very challenging to do so. To go straight to the point, you can see that through the past few years, a massive amount of reduction has happened in our part-time staff. And those part-time folks, they work incredibly hard. Those adjunct faculty, those part-time staff people that are student-facing, these are student-facing positions. And so our students feel the loss there. We obviously have collective bargaining agreements. To look at full-time reductions would need to be a conversation. It is one that we believe would be incredibly challenging and painful, just first and foremost because of the operations, right? As I said earlier, our faculty and staff have worked so hard for so long, and they've been told to do more with less, regardless of what the state of the state budget has been. And so here we are now. If I don't use these words lightly, I mean, it would have to be considered a kind of financial crisis. We would have to look at the potential of having conversations about full-time reductions. And it is something we do not want to do. We do not want to talk about that because we think that ultimately is just even more damaging to students. But it is something that we would have to engage in if we were not able to, find that balance that we're talking about.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. And I want to shift gears a little bit about the impact of these institutions on our state, which you've detailed in terms of how many of our graduates, which I'm proud to be one of, stay here in the state of Connecticut. But I want to talk about the impact of these institutions, particularly the state universities, on the communities that they're located in. It's not lost on me, and I may be mistaken about this, but I'm pretty confident that all 4 of your state universities and UConn's main campus are all located in distressed municipalities. And it's hard to understate, at least in the district that I'm very lucky to represent, how important Eastern is to the economy in Northeastern Connecticut. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the impact that these institutions have on those 4 communities.
Thank you for that. And I would actually extrapolate your question, if I may, to every single one of our campuses. And when you go to Quinebaug Valley Community College, when you go to Northwestern Connecticut Community College, when you go to any of our campuses, you see, hear, and feel how ingrained they are in the community. So, of course, we are serving students from each and every region. And I think it's really important to note that our students don't have the benefit and the luxury of being able to kind of move around as they want and see fit to go after the education that they're trying to pursue, right? Many of them are literally locked into a certain radius from their home or from their jobs. And so our locations are actually an incredible asset for access to education. But also think of them as an employment base. Think of the people, literally the thousands of people that are working at our institutions who derive their lifeblood and well-being from these careers. And I do mean careers. These are not just jobs. There are people who have worked at these institutions 20, 30, 40 years even. They've given their lives to these institutions. And so I think we have to be very mindful of the variety of factors, as you're noting, that each of these institutions is not about kind of moving a product or what have you, where there's a scalability that can be very fast, very nimble. These are human beings that have given their lives and their work to helping other human beings in their communities. I don't know if there's a way to actually measure that, Senator Flexer, beyond just looking at the number of people we employ and the radius from where they might come from, because the impact that they actually have is exponential.
Thank you for that. In your presentation, you talk about each of the state universities and the community college system with regard to its connection to the priorities identified by the governor's workforce council. I wonder if you could speak in a little bit more detail, and this again is a pointed question that you may not feel comfortable answering as honestly as I might hope. But why are we having this conversation when you're clearly meeting the needs of the governor's own workforce council and what their priorities are in terms of what we need for economic growth here in the state of Connecticut, and yet we're cutting your system by hundreds of millions of dollars? And just in my own backyard, President Nunez is here this afternoon, and I'm so sad that this is the last time we'll be greeting her as the president of Eastern Connecticut State University. She has just been an absolutely transformational leader at Eastern, and we're going to miss her tremendously, but glad to have her here today. And she, if you asked her 10 years ago, she would not have said, yes, I want one of my last things to be the successful launch of a nursing program at Eastern Connecticut State University. But here she is. That's what she's doing, because that's what the state of Connecticut needs. And she's been able to lead a partnership to make that happen. At QVCC, they're working to launch an LPN program, meeting the needs of employers right in Northeastern Connecticut. And that's what your institutions do all across the state of Connecticut. Why is there such a disconnect? What am I missing?
So I can only speak from our perspective, Senator Flexer, but I will say this, and I believe this is part of the point that you're trying to make, which is that our system, every single institution, every single campus should be part of the growth strategy of the state. And when we think about a growth strategy, what better asset to invest in than the people itself? We talk a lot about having the most educated populace of any state in the United States. And I think that's true and something we should be incredibly proud of. But we are not going to be able to continue to say that if we don't invest in the public higher education system, because not every student is able to go to a private, not every student can go to a flagship, but that does not mean that they are not worthy or intelligent or as hardworking or as capable as anyone else. And again, the alums across our state would speak to that, the impact that they're having. And so I would simply say that I hope that we get to a better place in the conversation where it is clear that the impact that we have, not just in terms of the statistics or the metrics or a spreadsheet, but in terms of the visceral day-to-day lifeblood reality of who and what Connecticut is, it does come from our system and from our people and from the thousands of faculty and staff who work with these students every single day to make their lives and to make their communities better. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I know we're at time, so I just have one last question. I want to ask you the same question I asked the folks at the University of Connecticut. If in this moment in 2024, instead of coming here, talking about your deficit mitigation plans, 5% increases in tuition, cuts in the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars looking forward, if instead this was a moment when you were coming out of the impacts of the pandemic, in your first year of this consolidated community college system, what would you be doing if we weren't having this conversation?
Thank you for that. We would be talking about our efforts to increase the K-12 pipeline. We will be talking about our efforts to increase transfer rates between our community colleges and our universities. We will be talking about advancing more programs that are online for adult, professional, and continuing learners. We would be talking about the work that we're doing now to reach those folks, hundreds of thousands of people who have some college but no degree. We would be talking about our efforts to combat brain drain by trying to keep as many Connecticut students in here as possible. But to be quite honest with you, New York and other states are coming after Connecticut students. And so we have tried to level the playing field as well by being more competitive for out-of-state students and international students, because Connecticut is a great place to be with incredible opportunity. And we need to attract even more people and bring them into Connecticut to be a part of that taxpayer base. And so there's so many positives. I appreciate you giving me a chance to just say some positive things. I couldn't be more proud to represent the faculty and the staff and our students who literally bust their backs and their tails every single day to try to make themselves and their communities better. That's what I would be talking about instead of this situation now. So thank you again for all your work and your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, don't see any other questions. Representative Walker, you know we're over a line.
Yeah, we are.
You're killing me.
This is our kids. This is our
You're killing
students.
me.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you all for coming today. I think you did a great job for what we have been hearing. I think some of the things that we need to hear more of are the students.
Yep.
And today at 5 o'clock, we will have our panels. And if anybody has never watched this, it is one that really makes you understand why my colleagues are so passionate about education and higher education, because this is the only opportunity that people get to make it in this country.
Yeah.
That is why Connecticut has to maintain the investment that they do. So I thank you for everything you do. And Dr. Maduco, I wanted you to give all your stats that I listened to at Gateway, which brought me to tears. So I hope we get to hear that a little bit more, because our kids are just phenomenal for what they have to go through, because homelessness is something that was not talked about. But many of our students suffer, and they do it with pride, because education is that important. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank you,
good
everyone.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to close this part of our day. And we'll be back at, I believe, 5?
5 o'clock.
5